Rich on your phone.
Hmm.
He's on mute, he's talking.
The Lakes Committee has met approximately 10 times since October. We've discussed a lot of things. I believe that I think the board ought to take an action on what comes under the jurisdiction of the Lakes Committee. And we cannot make and take action on anything unless we know what our parameters are. We have discussed it. I believe personally that anything that touches the water comes into the Lakes Committee and is discussed. And then if there is an overlap with another committee, it should be discussed. The Lakes Committee believes that there should have been a meeting of all committee chairmen by now to discuss what is ahead in the future, including long-term planning. And the board will have a stance on that. And I believe that previous and current budgets reflect on the Lakes Committee. Therefore, those subjects should be out of the Lakes Committee's jurisdiction. We presented our recommendations regarding the docks to two board members who attended our meeting, the last meeting. That is our final draft. If the board doesn't want to review it at this time and wait until other committees meet, that's perfectly fine with me. But I know that people have put in hours and hours and hours into all of the lakes projects, and the board has not responded to submission of any of the documents.
Okay, so Rich, let's commit to trying to get the committee chairs together this week. And then in terms of what actions the Lakes Committee believes the board can take, I'll visit with you offline to make sure that we get that on track. I'll own that. That should probably come before the board before, and I'll make sure we get that back on track. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll have to coordinate. I know Earl has some very serious personal issues to deal with this week, so I want to be respectful of that. But if we're able to meet this week, great. If not, it will definitely be by the following week.
But isn't that why we kind of report out as a committee anyways?
I think the issue is there's some natural, when we reorganize these committees, there are some issues that used to fit in one committee or another, or that might now overlap with other committees. And so we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about who's going to be tackling what, because what we don't want to happen, and this just played out in real time this month, is the Lakes Committee, for example, will take up an issue that we as a board or whatever believe belongs to the oversight committee, or vice versa. And the committee spends a bunch of time coming up with ideas and thoughts and puts pen to paper, even maybe votes on it, and then comes to find out it wasn't really their issue to begin with. I just don't want to waste anybody's time. So
But that's, but I guess what I'm saying is that the collaboration that you're asking for is the meeting, is this.
well, no, it's where you have it's
Doesn't have to be.
it's more of a workshop between the chairs to make sure that
Okay,
specific items or topic areas, we know which committee they're going to go
I
into.
just don't want us to make it more difficult than it really needs to be.
I don't either, but I do think Rich is right that a sort of a workshop just with the chairs to sort that out will prevent a lot of headaches down the road. Rich, you had your hand up.
Yeah, you've covered it.
Okay.
Can I make just a suggestion?
Yes.
I know that we have been reporting back to community members to attend the oversight meeting if they have a question about this. And if it's not going to get resolved today or tomorrow, should we encourage them not to be, if they're going solely there for that reason?
I'll defer to Earl on that.
No,
I think it was to be
I
discussed.
mean, I don't do elephants in the room. I want to be very transparent, but also very brief to Patrick's point. The boat slip issue was brought to us to address, not the oversight committee said, hey, we want to address this topic. So when it was brought to this committee, the information that I had at the time, there was a draft here. Let's kind of start, to Patrick's point, let's start here and craft the information. Now, the other thing of it is that I don't think, and this is my personal view, I don't think no one in the community should not have an opportunity to actively voice their opinion. So in the agenda for Tuesday's board meeting, Tuesday's committee meeting, there is agenda number 2. Everyone will have the opportunity to speak their mind about this issue in the context around vote slips and the vote slip policy. But to that point, I think Patrick brings some clarity that there also needs to be clarity of what the handoff is. Again, our last board meeting last month, this wasn't even on the topics to be discussed because you and I didn't know it was something that needed to be remediated.
So sorry to jump in, but to answer your question, folks, it'll be talked about.
Yep.
But if you're there with an expectation that something's gonna be voted
It
on,
won't be voted on.
don't.
Is that
Don't have that
document
expectation.
going to be shared with the oversight committee? Because I don't know what draft you're.
It just came this morning. It
Okay.
just came this morning.
Alex?
I didn't know we got an issue, right?
I didn't either.
Explain.
This is the wrong form. Let's talk because I think it's gonna take it off. Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it's okay. Excuse me? Oh, yes, yes.
It's a committee issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to keep things in the committees. All right, Rich, yes,
I want to extend this. The water is where we all thrive on as a community. And therefore, it should be equitable for every resident to have the same privileges and rights. And I know that the oversight is in agreement with that principle.
Yes, sir.
So, the vested interest of what goes on in the water, from ecology all the way on to the geese and the beach sand and boats going in and out of the lake, people that are interested and have the activity knowledge have joined into the lake's activity. And we've invited the community as a whole into that discussion of the ecology, and then we share it back to the board. And the last presentation we gave the board had all of that information. The final review and opinion regarding the docs is very similar to the existing documents. It doesn't take any of the privileges away that exist now in the documents and the application. It just secures the position of everybody else. But in addition, in addition to what I requested, I believe that the water company by the board should be instructed to communicate to the Lakes Committee about activities going on that affect the quality of our water and report back. For example, I've asked for a question whether or not the Princeton Hydro has given any reports, any intermittent reports to the water company. And we are going into our usage season in the very close future as recreation. Recreation has an effect on water quality. And therefore, we should know and be able to disseminate that information within the community. I'm finished.
thanks, Rich. Joel, I want to recognize you had your hand up.
Okay, thanks. So being that we're still having this discussion of who should decide on what goes on with the docs, does it make sense to table the discussion for the oversight committee? So until that we work it out so that we can deal with it in the proper, if it's in the oversight committee, fine. But if it's in the lakes, it's fine also. But just let's decide where it goes before we open it up for a further discussion.
Well, one, Tom and I have already had conversations, Tom being the chair of the Lakes Committee in partnership with Rich and myself. So everyone's going to be participatory in Tuesday's call. I think the other thing of it is that there are community members who have earned the right to speak their views. I will not allow them to speak their views on Tuesday, being that that's the first opportunity. I think in addition to that, Patrick will provide some guidance as it relates to, hey, this issue kind of sits there, this issue kind of sits there, and collectively get with the subcommittee chairs. But Tuesday is what we've communicated, and what we've been communicating for what, 2 weeks now. That will not be taken away from the community members. Now, please note, and I want to be clear, there will not be any actions without getting guidance from our board president and the board as a whole on where the handoff is between the two committees. But we're not going to take anything away from the persons who have already expressed, hey, we want to be clear and have the forum to talk about our positions, that will happen on Tuesday.
All right, we got it. Let's move on. All right, I'm gonna give the bylaws committee update. The bylaws committee met this past Tuesday. We had a slightly lighter turnout than usual. But we did go over some red line changes to a proposal by some committee members to add a provision to our bylaws, making the bylaws committee a permanent standing committee. There's some back and forth over really two issues, which is the wording in the provision about the qualifications for members of that committee. The tension being a difference between highlighting that certain expertise in the law and in bylaws is encouraged, but certainly not required, versus sort of making that the feature characteristic of any member for that committee. But in either case, the language as it reads either way, it certainly doesn't make that a requirement. Anybody can apply. The other piece of it is whether, and this is a little bit more fundamental, is whether the proposed bylaws permanent standing committee would provide its interpretation of the bylaws to the board, either on request of the board, so in other words, more or less advisory, or regardless of whether it's requested, in other words, a sort of a mandatory constitutional judicial body above the board, which you can imagine there were some of us have different opinions on that one way or the other. So we're working through the language on that. We think we've kind of landed those who are on the call on a way to massage that a little bit, which is to say that it addresses a concern that a minority of board members who might not, who feel like they don't have any place to go to say, hey, I think the board is violating the bylaws, that they could still go to this bylaws committee and say, can I get an interpretation? Any one member of the board can do that. And that seems fair. So that seems like an easy workable compromise. But again, we didn't have enough members to vote on it anyway. So we'll be taking it back up again in the April meeting. We also discussed, just an update quickly on, we're continuing to review potential ambiguities in the bylaws, which will bring back for the board with more or less like a package of potential amendments that would be put out to vote in the summertime at the, I guess, fall at the annual meeting. And then I'm working as well on some additional corporate governance documents. Those are things board members have talked about, written policies and good corporate procedures and that sort of stuff. Finally, a proposal to increase the percentage of dues for buildable and non-buildable lots. It's a germ of an idea that's been presented, but we really didn't have much to go on. And Hal, just acknowledge that you've raised the issue. We didn't have much to go on as a committee, so if you can join us maybe next month, we can have a little bit more to talk about there. But look, the idea is shoring up our finances a bit. The question is a matter of the bylaws of community. Should lot owners contribute more to the bottom line? And that's the question. So we'll tackle that again in April. I don't know whether that will result in some proposal coming to the board or not, but that's all I have to report. Any questions? Cool. We're going to go on to the next committee. Earl, oversight, if you could be.
Yeah, no further issues. The only other thing, there is some support from Alana a few months back, as well as Eric, one of the other persons participated on providing some recommendations for a draft for the rental rules updates that Brittany requested. It was sent over to Brittany. We walked through them. She had some red lines. She'll send those over. I'll get them first of this week. And then I'll redistribute those once she sends over those updates to our oversight committee. And then from there, we'll look at them. I think we're in a great situation, and just sitting with her and Michael, they said they were spot on. She just had a couple of changes she wanted to make. And I think once the management office has kind of greenlit what we put, then and only then can we move forward as an oversight committee to look at the next steps of ratification of that document.
And that's the rental rules for the clubhouse.
For the clubhouse, I apologize. Yes. Yeah.
Good point.
For the clubhouse.
That's it. The other topics we've already talked about. There's no pressing issues. The dog, the poop issue is something that we need to talk about, but I don't think this is the right forum. I expect that'll be an item that'll be picked up on Tuesday.
Thank you. Question for Earl? Great. Hal, long range planning?
Hi, long-range planning did not meet this month in March. Our last meeting in February was just myself and one other community member. So I kind of put it off. I think we need to retract. I'd love to get some more people involved, more volunteers on long-range planning. I would really love to see another board member on that committee. So far, it's only developing, the opposite of what I want. And I don't want this to be about my ideas. I want it to be about the community's ideas for the future of this community. So I would really appreciate if we have some more volunteers. You can reach out to me by email, phone number 516-398-4287 if you're interested. I will try to reschedule or try to schedule a meeting in April, hopefully the early part of April, and see if we can get that ball rolling. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was, and I spoke to Rich about this months ago, I brought it up at a board meeting. I'd love to see all the committees put together a list of things they want to include in a survey. And let's plan that, get the survey out to the community. And that could be about long-term planning, about things about docks, about what we want to do, in the future.
Prioritize action.
Yeah, so if everybody,
Yeah, we don't have.
kind of, I'm happy to coordinate that. If you give me a list, 8-10 questions each that you want to address in a survey, let's put together one
We should
survey.
Probably do more and less. Less questions, more of them going out every 2 weeks or something like that. They get too long, people don't want to do it.
Okay, so not one survey, you're saying,
Right, do
multiple
a couple of
surveys.
them, so people
Okay.
spend the time and
Okay.
do them.
And frankly, I don't know how to write a survey. I think Chris did a great job with the survey that he circulated
Survey
a
Monkey
while
knocked
back,
out.
Survey Monkey,
Knocked
yeah,
out.
but I'm happy to collect all the data and all the concerns that every committee has, and we'll try to get that rolling.
If we
Great.
move forward, we can add me, I'll help you. Just let me know.
Thank
To help try to increase engagement on the long range planning committee, how would you mind sending maybe a short draft message to Brittany that we can send out by email and put on the Facebook page for folks who want to express their interest in it? And we'll include just a little description about what the committee's
I
role is.
would like to be on.
And we're happy to announce Hal's new volunteer.
Co-chair.
Hey man, you raised your hand.
There you go.
No, seriously, thank you. Alex, thank you. It's appreciated. It really is.
On top of being vice president of the water.
All right, Chris, we're gonna move on to you, combining events and welcoming, not combining, but you'll have to do both.
Yeah,
If you-
so first of all, Hal, I'm happy to provide support on the technical piece of the survey. We should get together and tell me what you want, and then I'll put together a draft. So a few things, I'm kind of running behind my committee members at the moment, but we just got on spring break, so I'm hoping to catch up on some business this week. So business includes putting together a summer calendar of activities. Committee members have contributed some really awesome ideas. I'm excited about the coming warm weather. And wanted to thank Carla Cohn for spending some time with me a couple weeks ago, putting together physical welcoming baskets for new residents. And again, I'm running behind and actually starting to distribute those, but we're going to get to that soon. And then the last thing on the subject of surveys, I wanted to thank the community. We had nearly 80 responses on the fitness programming survey that I sent out about a month ago. So the outcome of that, which I can share the results with the board, but the next step on that is to start forming some kind of community fitness groups. These won't be instructor led. These are just sort of member groups based on the interests that members have expressed, whether that's pickleball or hiking or what have you. So I really wanted to just thank everybody who took a few minutes to give their feedback on that, and hopefully that'll contribute to a kind of a stronger community going forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Questions for Chris? Fantastic. Joel, Finance Committee?
Yeah, the finance committee met. We had two other people come, and one of them is a CPA that has a public accounting practice. So based on that, we figured that we're going to hold off to have another meeting until after April 15th because he's a little busy. I'd like to get more people involved. I don't know if the involvement stays this low, if we should continue it. So I'll let you know after April 15th. We'll probably have a meeting in May. So we'll see how it goes with that. And we'll put it all out there and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable point about the tax deadline for those in that profession. But Joel, I just asked the same thing that I've asked of Hal, which is if you want to try to increase engagement, maybe get a note to Brittany that we can push out, which would
Sure.
help for people and describe a little bit.
200 people take that? Oh.
All right, thank you, Joel.
All right.
Give out free alcohol.
Michael Gutnick for LCA, if you want to give a quick update.
Yeah, very quick update. I want to share with you a current update that was sent out from March by the LCA. And it talks about our loss of our case with respect to the warehouse part in Avon Park. So we had that project under
How
review.
detailed are you getting?
What?
How detailed are you?
Not really, you know. You can sit here. I don't mind.
Michael, you don't need to
There's
recuse.
no excuse to go out and do something like that.
Yeah.
So the judge in effect turned our appeal down by saying there's enough weight of the material that was prepared. By the way, well, substantially by the developer, not the town, that they felt they did a decent job. So we lost that appeal. And we're now working through a process of requiring a community vote for the expansion of the sewer district. We don't want the town to just expand the sewer district and ultimately place the responsibility on the sewer users to pay for the Avon Park project in terms of the cost of running it. So we have something called a permissive resolution, which we filed, which we have 300 signatures. And we're now filing the developer, all the legitimacy for signatures. The town is saying, we don't want to be involved in this. Go file the developer directly, which is absurd. So we're filing the developer's legal counsel, and hopefully we'll get to have a referendum in the spring regarding whether or not any the people of the who use the sewer district want to expand the district to include Avon Park. And the Avon Park issue, as I mentioned earlier, is a problem not just in terms of volume, but in terms of what they're going to put through that sewer district. The sewer plant was not designed for industrial waste, which is part of what the Avon Park promotion is for. They're looking to get high density storage there, as well as possibly a manufacturing facility there. So that's a real problem. The other thing I want to tell you is the way in which development is taking place in this town is incremental, piece by piece. No one's sitting here with a big picture. There's no long-term planning committee going on in the town of Thompson deliberately. So Avon Park is a 560,000 square foot project. This is on the table now in two pieces, okay? There's a 500,000 square foot warehouse about a mile that way being planned. And another one next door to it, but they're not combining them, they're showing them separately, because they want to get them approved individually, because no one wants to be looking at 1.3 million square feet of warehouses within a mile of our area. Now, what is that going to do? You will not be able to drive down 17 in the summer, because if you come down in front of Friday night or Sunday afternoon, you're going to be locked up with trucks. So, but doing individual studies, it shows it's marginally acceptable, but when you put them all together, it's totally unacceptable. So we're sitting here trying to fight this project, but our problem right now is we don't have the money to fight this project. And it's not technically in Rock Hill. So this project may go on without our control because we just are running out of money. We're going to spend our money on Avon Park and the sewer district, and we're not going to spend our money trying to deal with that project. But you should be concerned because it's going to affect our community. And there's not going to be residents over there in Bridgeville who can accumulate enough money for filing legal briefs. The last one I think I want to tell you about is at Hammersmith. They got their building permit approved. We lost that case as well because the judge said, we recognize that it's not part of the zoning plan, but we don't think it's going to have a material adverse effect on the community. So they approved that project and they now have a building permit, they're going to start construction, and there's little we can do to stop them without massive court litigation, which we can't afford. So we're focusing our efforts right now on dealing with the Avon Park project. I'm making it progressively more difficult for them to get it done. We have some wildlife surveys we're trying to do, which will show that there are bald eagle nests possibly there, and there are other animals there that they can't build over. So I'll try and answer any questions you might have quickly.
Thanks.
I think you covered a lot.
I will say, hang on, just a second. I will say I've been attending for our board, the town board meetings, the last couple of them on the sewer issue. And what I heard at the last town board meetings, that I think town board has said with regard to the petition, it's in the courts now, so they read out what the list of the developers' objections were, and then they said, listen, this is going to be referred to the judge, and the judge will rule on each one of those. Tom?
Couple questions. What are all the warehouses proposed to, what's going in there?
We don't
All
know.
three of them?
Okay, they're open-ended. The document I gave to our Arlene showed that the marketing plan that the broker JLL is using to market the property is, it could be a high cube warehouse, which means it isn't just 500,000 square feet, but it's 5,000 square feet, 500,000 square feet. It's 500,000 square feet of double height floors, which means you're doing twice the amount of storage and twice the amount of trucking activity. And also they want permission to build a manufacturing facility there, which is not even a warehouse. So at the end of the day, the developer, our friendly developer, is not going to build that facility. He wants to sell it. His asking price $16.8 million for the property right now. So he just wants to have a full set of permits to do anything he wants, to go get special permits to expand it possibly, and just get a check on what
Value of this property.
So we don't know what any.
No, we don't
businesses-
know. In fact, they want permission for a manufacturing facility, for a high density warehouse or other things.
And then the permit for the hum spec, what are they building there?
We have no idea, quite frankly. They call it, it's a summer camp. Our original appeal was based on dual use. You can't have a dual use facility, a summer camp, and also a facility for dealing with people with nervous problems or other damage problems. So right now I think they're building a big meeting room, you know, some huge building. There's some pictures on it. And by the way, the thing I handed out, if you go to the Rock Hill LCA or website, you'll see pictures of what the size of the facility they're building. They're now building out the land they cleared looks like a football field size.
I've driven past it, that's part of the reason I was asking.
Right, it's a huge football field size piece of property, and they're building something on it, they're building a huge building on it. I don't know what's gonna be inside. I'm not sure anybody knows what's gonna be inside. But at the end of the day, when I'm going back to the court with this, because the court says it's not a problem for us.
Any other board member questions for Mike? Right, hearing none, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Quick and hopefully efficient.
Yeah, no, that's very, very good. Our next regular meeting is going to be on the 16th of April. And before the board moves to executive session, we want to see if folks in the room or on Zoom have questions or comments. But first we'll go within the room this time. Leslie, you see you have your hand up.
Yes, I have a few questions. The first one is in the management report. Does the Emerald Green has, for that merchandise, does Emerald Green gets any money from that?
No,
No rev share?
So what do we get from that?
Pride, so the community members, homeowners here could wear an emerald green shirt or hat or something like that.
It's not advertising the company selling it, we're just advertising our
It
brand.
was always just to brand the community.
Right. Insurance, are we shopping for bids
That's
for the insurance?
Yeah, so
on the agenda.
it is absolutely. So the brokers take it out, obviously, and they shop around, right? We have a relationship typically with one broker of record. That's the official broker that can go out and you know, search for that for us. We have, I'm sorry?
You guys will go to the community.
Well, we may not get 3 bids. Yeah,
But if you get the 3 bids,
We-
when you get the 3 bids, you will go to the community, let them know, you know, bid number 1 is this much, bid number 2 is this much.
so I'm not, when you say bids, you mean premium proposals?
No.
Yeah, we may not,
Review, we shop it for, you know,
yeah, it unfortunately hasn't proven to be that fulsome that we get enough of those proposals. What I can tell you is we're going to competitively look at our broker relationship this coming year. So certainly we expect some folks to really see what they can do to make our situation a lot better, but Michael, you wanted to add?
One thing that makes it very complex for us is the dam. We have a Class C high hazard dams, and there's not a lot of companies that insure that. So that's one of the things that makes it very difficult to get all those folks like you're talking about.
But if we do as many as we can get competitive quotes when the time comes, well, everyone will have a chance to see them because the board will have to vote on them, so they'll be
I
presented.
think it's important that we prioritize this, though. The priority number one is making sure we are insured. And so that was our number one priority, is to make sure that we didn't go through a time frame with no insurance. So under no circumstance was that an option for us. So we took the option that we had at the time. We also need to
You
make
also
sure.
had construction going on during that, so it's not.
Yeah, but I think what Leslie's saying is that when we improve the process, we make sure that it's in full view of the community. And I think that's a very fair point. And yeah,
My second one for February. Ongoing audit for the 2022 financials. You say Caitlin is working on the audit and you may get it on time this time. What's the time frame for that? What is on time?
Yeah, I think our typical schedule on that, April, May.
There should be.
we're pushing for it. And
Yes, that's.
And there's so far not been anything that we're aware of that would prevent it from meeting that goal.
Okay. Committee members are allowed in the workshops. You guys said you were gonna have some workshops. Are community members allowed to?
I mean, we're not trying to foreclose people out, but we got to be able to have conversations and communicate so that we can we're really not debating issues or making decisions in those meetings. It's really just more the administrative side of getting, what issue are we going to tackle? Do we need to deal with this? Even when we have issues that need to be dealt with in an executive session, like a legal question or that, we won't do those in those workshops. Or personnel, we won't do those in those workshops. We'll call either a special meeting and then go to executive session, or we'll do like we're going to do in a few moments, which is go to executive session.
The LCA has the board members for the LCA, as board member as a whole, go to the meetings in town to represent us.
We are not taking,
Yeah.
we have decided that we're not taking a position as a board on any particular issues, development wise or whatever. But I've gone to town board meetings, for example, to represent our board, not to represent our board. I'm not speaking there. I'm not saying this is a position we have, but I'm just really there as sort of eyes and ears.
Okay.
I've gone as a personal interest,
Homeowner.
as a homeowner. As a resident.
My last item is that I just want you guys to be on notice that you're violating the bylaws in place right now. Article 6, Section 4. If a member fails to attend 3 board meetings, we have, and I'm just gonna say this from May of last year, some of those meetings have not fallen into the current year. 5/22 of last year, 7/11 of last year, 9/11 of last year, 10/16 of last year, 10/30 of last year, 11/12 of last year, 12/11 of last year, and today's meeting. You have Arthur Kaplan that has made several meetings, and according to the bylaws, you're violating the bylaws because he should have been removed from the board after 3 meetings being missed. And I want to know, what are you guys planning on doing anything about that?
I
There
think
are
that
2
there's going
members.
to be a form sent from the president to the member, documenting that.
And that goes from election. It doesn't go back to last year.
I understand that, but those,
Leslie, it's the first that's come up, so we'll look into it.
yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's it from my end.
Okay, anybody else in the room? Nope. Okay. Marcy's, Rich, I see your hand up too, but Marcy's had hers up for quite a while. So Marcy and then Rich.
Thank you. So a few comments. One, as a member of the Lake Communities Alliance Steering Committee, I just want to add a few points to what Michael has said. One is just everybody needs to be aware that Hamaspic Resort is zoned as a hotel. which is a, open to the public. And of course, we know that this is not, and, this is of great concern. The building is going to be enormous. We've seen pictures. It looks like a combination of a mausoleum and Fort Knox. They have multiple purposes that they've mentioned, a mikvah and classrooms and a event space and whatever. So, I mean, this is our planning board in action. The other thing about Avon is that it is close to 600 acres, and on the initial plan and never removed from the initial plan, just pushed aside, was a high density housing development of 1,396 units. And my last view of the most recent census that I could find for all of Rock Hill was 1,516 people. So obviously this would multiply it possibly tenfold. So just, we need to be aware of what is going on in our town at large, because it will all have enormous impacts on us, our property values, our quality of life, and many other things. The other comments are just regarding the water company. I want to say, I think Zach would be fabulous. So this is just, additional comments beyond that. I think it is important to open it to the community, and by community, I would like it to be those people whose lives are immediately impacted by the lake itself. So it would be Emerald Green and Lake Louise community. And I think those are the people who should have a say in the water company, and who should be able to sit on the board if there's interest. I think transparency is essential, and I really am pleased that it's being talked about and hope that it will be followed up with. And then I do agree with Rich Brown that the water company should communicate with the Lakes Committee, because it's all about the lake, the water, and the gem of our community and the basis for our property values and our quality of life. So thank you. Oh, just in time, I'm muting.
And I agree with him.
Rich?
Few months back, I recommended that we have the water company recommend commercial rates. And I was told that they have to submit such a thing to the agency that's in charge of them. And I was wondering if any discussion or action has been taken on that, because in the future, having more commercial interests using our lakes, the community's volume of water is threatened. It also affects our sewage rates, because what goes in goes out. And I think that the community members of Emerald Green should not pay for commercial usage in the long term. Many utilities provide commercial rates that are higher, as much as 25%. And I think that we ought to have that. I don't know if there's anybody on the water company board there can answer whether or not they ever made an application.
Alan's here, if he wants to respond. He may.
Yeah, I mean, we are, even the Center for Discovery is gonna have a different rate than, common.
I can hear him. I can't hear him.
If you can come closer to the
The
owl.
answer is yes.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Yes, you've made application.
There's a
Yes.
process going
Yeah, so the
forward.
process, we're in.
Still don't understand what's going on.
The answer to your question
Yeah.
is, Rich, is yes, they have put in that application, that process is underway.
Okay, great. The next thing is, instead of, we just discussed the idea of overlap committee meetings. Okay, I would like to recommend that Earl, who is by Robert's rules, chairman of all committees, set up a date and actually schedule something like that at his convenience.
Rich.
He just got an additional responsibility.
All right, what do you do now?
He's asking that you coordinate
Coordinate a committee agenda.
Overlaps.
Okay, it's so in all honesty, and I am, again, I'm always transparent. I need to get through this coming week. This coming week is gonna be challenging for my family. I'll circle back with you. I have no problems taking that on. If the rest of the board want me to take that responsibility to coordinate it, I can do that, not a
Well,
problem.
that's, rather than let it all go for another month for another board meeting, I'm suggesting that the board recommend that we work internally behind the scenes to get this accomplished. I'm more than happy to work with you, but I understand the protocol of Robert's rules.
Yeah,
And I'm
I will convey with Patrick offline, and that, I think that's something that.
Yeah, we've committed to get that set up. We'll do it.
I'll take that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To that
Thanks,
end,
Rich.
I'm also not available this coming week.
Okay.
I'm away.
All right. Hillary, your hand is up.
Yeah, just to, can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Okay, just to end the meeting on a really high note, first of all, thank you all for everything you do. And back to the poop thing. I think it's great, everything that everybody's going to do, but something we can do immediately and very quickly is just put some signs up at the dog park. It's so easy to just put some signs up. And I agree with the emails and everything reminding, but let's just get signs up. Somebody can go to, Trading Post and get some signs and wire them up. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I think we've committed to do that. I think you're right. Thank you. All right, any other questions?
Is that where the problem is, in the dog park or out?
It's both. It's
So-
both.
Okay,
Both.
and I didn't know it was a problem in the. Okay.
Yeah. it's
Yeah.
both.
Got it.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. The board's going to go into executive session now, so I'll ask that those on Zoom kindly see yourselves off, and thank you to those who are in the room. Thanks, everybody, for your
Thank
time.
you.
As a matter of fact, when we do our community cleanup, it's amazing
Thank you for coming.
how many
Thank you, man.
bags. You just left it
There's
there.
a keyhole of them, yeah.
Yeah.
A honey hole of poop.
Of poop bags.
It's,
So that's why we almost have to think of like putting stations throughout the community, or it's not gonna change. And I don't even know how much that's gonna solve.
right, I
Are
do.
you,
And then somebody's.
So you guys that are still here, please leave the meeting or we'll
sign off?
get you off.
I don't think it's an issue of stations. I just think it's just an issue of courtesy. I mean, how hard? is it
Joel, we
to
hear you.
Except for Joel and Chris. for now.
I said, how hard is it to take the poop home? I do it, so. not that big of
Go
a
go
deal.
on mute before you say something you're not supposed to say, bro.
I've might.
Joel, we hear you.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's just not that hard to take the poop home. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, we didn't know what you were saying, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I understand.
My wife
I
tells me-
appreciate it.
You poop home.
So we need a poop commission.
We had people.
You and I,
Need no more.
it's all over the road, and it gets run over by a car, and then you had 100 feet of it. All the way down the road, whether you're riding your bike with your kid or walking down the road.
Yeah,
or
it was,
whatever.
there were issues that came from the community, hey, we think folks should be fined, and we want to create some. doors, somebody just walk the community and.
Yeah, that's great,
pictures.
but it's not enforceable.
Oh, they wanted to enforce it.
Yeah,
They
with
would
laws.
I think you take a picture. I think you take a picture of the guy leaving the dog, you know?
No, you're opening up a can of worms, man.
How else are you gonna prove the guy say, no, that's not
But
my dog?
Patrick,
For the record.
how do we separate that from going out on Zoom?
What do you mean?
Or
Can you edit? We're gonna cut the video.
Okay.
So now that we have just the board, we're now in executive session, so I'm gonna close the video and the recording.
And then I guess you're gonna eliminate the last 2 minutes. Is what they're saying. The last 2 minutes of poop.